Hey out there, let's do this, America. This is DrMikeSevilla live for Sunday, August 31st, 2014. It is 2:09 p.m. Eastern Time. I apologize again for starting late because I just chat a lot with the guests, so sorry about that. And here at Family Medicine Rocks World Headquarters, it feels like 72 degrees Fahrenheit. We had a little bit of a rain overnight. But shout out to my pals out at the Campfield Fair today, the biggest county fair around here. So hopefully you guys are having a good day, having all that fair food, and you guys know what I'm talking about. So our topic today is the 2014 Stanford Medicine X conference, just beginning in just a few days, September 5 to 7, 2014. And please check out my other interviews. With our friends Dr. Brian Veridabedian, Meredith Gould, and Christopher Snyder. You can get all those at MikeSevilla.tv. That gets you right to the to my YouTube site. You'll be able to check all those out. And if I have time, hopefully I have time, I can write out some nice blog posts about those as well at DrMikeSevilla.com. So I'm very excited about today's interview, which we'll jump right into right after I introduced our guest. Sarah Kucharski, hope I said that right, is the CEO and founder of FMD Chat, a nonprofit organization supporting those around the world affected by rare vascular disease, which we'll talk about during our interview. She also serves as an e-patient on the e-patient advisory board for the MEDX conference. And she'll also be moderating a panel, which I want to get to in a little bit as well, which I think is very interesting for this year: depression and chronic illness and coping through online communities. And hopefully at the end of the interview, I do want to talk to her about this too. She's an award-winning writer and editor of Smoky Mountain Living, a nationally published regional lifestyle magazine covering Western North Carolina, East Tennessee, North Georgia, and Southwest Virginia. She just had a deadline, which we'll talk about that, and that's why she's a lot more relaxed today. So thank you for being here, afternoon napper.
Thank you, Mike. I really appreciate it.
So yeah, let's just kind of jump into this Medicine X meeting. It's going to be my first meeting there, and in kind of my preparation to talk with you, I looked at your 5-minute Ignite speech from last year, which was awesome, which was superb. And I saw some interviews that you were doing. How was that? Because you do a lot of speaking everywhere. How was it preparing for a 5-minute Ignite speech at Medicine X as opposed to speaking at other events?
Well, in regards to the Ignite, it's actually something that I am doing again this year. It was a late addition to the schedule, and so I'll actually be doing another talk on Friday. But preparing for it, for me, I went through and I had written this entire speech that was sort of wiggling around having a point, and actually referred it to Nick Dawson, who is a friend and another one of our advisors. And he asked me a very, very good question of, what's your point? And what are you trying to get at? What do you want people to do as a result of this? And I wasn't able to answer him at first, and so had to go back and really reevaluate everything, and ended up pretty much scrapping everything that I'd written and writing the speech that I delivered in one fell swoop at about 2 a.m. And yeah, so my favorite writing is always done late at night. So, and preparing for it, actually rehearsing, it was something that my husband helped me with. And they always say that whenever you're doing public speaking that you're supposed to imagine the audience naked. Well, he wanted to help me with that, and so...
Whoa. Are we getting into TMI territory here? Because I might be banned from YouTube. Please continue.
So he stripped down to his boxers, not all the way, but his boxers, and sat in the living room, and I stood in the dining room, actually where I am right now, and was able to deliver my speech to him that way. And he's just always been so incredibly great about helping and being a coach and listening for little tiny things. And so his encouragement was really important. But in relation to Medicine X in particular, it's sort of my home territory in a way. And, you know, whenever the home team plays at home, then you want to win and really, you know, knock it out of the park, not just have that kind of 1-0 thing, but you want to do well. And so, yeah, there was pressure. There was absolutely pressure. But luckily, I mean, I went up there and it went exactly how I wanted it to go. And so I was really pleased with that. And maybe I'll be able to do somewhat similar this year.
And for people who haven't seen it, I encourage you, it's on YouTube. Go search for it. And what Sarah did was this very poignant talk about her husband, about Caregiver. And you could have chosen any topic, you know, patient advocacy, your disease state, empowerment of patients, but you talk about caregivers, and you talked about specifically your husband. How did you come up with that topic? Was that kind of Nick's kind of having you rack your brain too and saying, what do you really want to say?
Well, I kind of knew the story that I wanted to tell, because I think that's really what makes any kind of speech entertaining, engaging, is that you're not up there just lecturing, it's that you're sharing something. And so I've known that our relationship as patient and caregiver has been really pretty unique, because for us, we were thrust into it as newlyweds, and Travis is not exactly built to be a caregiver, and so I had to kind of fly by the seat of his pants for that. And it was Nick's questioning of what do you want people to do as a result of this? That was the issue. And it's encouraging patients to take that ownership of it, and because we can get so very much inside our patienthood, which, I mean, we're supposed to. We are going through the illness. It's something that, like, nobody else can experience that for us. And so it's just so easy to get myopic. But there are more people than just you, the patient, who are going through this illness. And whether or not that's your children or your parents or your friends or your pets, like, there's more than just you. And so you have to really be responsible for thinking about, how does this affect the entire picture, and how are your actions affecting the people who are trying to help you?
So let's kind of dive into this Stanford Medicine X. People can go to medicinex.stanford.edu. And I was able to experience it in the past couple of years on the live stream, which we'll get to the Global Access Program in a little bit. But for people like me who are going to be going there for the first time in person, and for people like you who have been there year after year after year, you know, what kind of things should I expect? What kind of maybe even new elements to the agenda, to the program, will people who have been there be experiencing this year?
Well, the first thing is that we've actually expanded the conference a little bit, so that the conference proper is Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Friday we have the plenary sessions. Saturday, Sunday we have breakouts. But on Thursday we're having these pre-conference workshops, which previously had only included the IDEO Design Challenge, which I say only, but it's like pretty much like awesome and only. And I've gotten to do that both as a patient, as a center of a team, and as a participant, and I do have to say that I am going to miss it this year a little bit. But I will be leading a workshop based on bringing patients to the center of clinical trials. And so I'm really excited about doing that, because we'll be actually working with some pharma company employees to learn about the clinical trials process and how can we incorporate patient feedback to make this something so that it's less of a burden to patients, so that they can get engaged and contribute to research. And part of that is even defining, why is research important? Because it's kind of one of those things that I think everybody thinks that everybody else is doing, and that's not always the case. So we'll have that going on. We'll have an entrepreneurship event going on. It's going to be just right from the get-go, getting thrown into it. Then Friday, we'll have our team next. And there are going to be some little tiny things thrown in here and there. Some things are top secret, which will be fun. Like,
you want to break some news right now.
I want to, but yeah. No, so,
I won't tell anybody. We won't tell.
Right. Well, everybody, it's always the case that people at the end of a conference, or it's getting near the end, and it's like, oh gosh, I just want to go home. Like, I'm tired of learning, and they leave. You really shouldn't leave. Like, you really, really shouldn't leave. Yeah, because yes, it's on the schedule that we're going to have Marvin Calderon Jr.
Yes, I saw that on the schedule.
Yes,
that's on the formal open
that's
schedule.
On the formal open schedule.
Yes.
But all of that is not on the schedule. So it's going to be awesome, totally awesome, and you should stick around for it. So, and then other fun little things I've heard mention of perhaps there being a specialty barista and some opportunities to meet people for coffee at this little specialty barista kind of environment. And then we've always got like our tech stuff that's always engaging, all kinds of different breakout sessions. I mean, there's just so incredibly much to it. I call it this, choose your own adventure kind of thing. And that's really the case because you can make it be whatever you want it to be.
Yeah, I looked at the schedule and it looked pretty overwhelming, and I guess in a good way. I'm not sure, but I talked with Meredith Gould, and we're self-confessed introverts, and
Yes.
There's going to be times where we'll be like, this is awesome, but I have to go find my filter someplace, and I might be back in a few minutes. So I just want to tell people right away that I'm not being antisocial. I love you guys. But just. Yeah, I just made a little mean time.
Yeah,
just saying.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm the same way, and I had to even tell our e-patients that said, if you come up to me and I don't talk to you, that doesn't mean I don't like you. Specifically, maybe we'll see. It depends on who you are. I might not like you, but no. But yeah, but taking that time to recharge and be quiet, because while I am kind of a chatty Cathy, like, it takes a lot out of me, and so I have to take the time to rest and recuperate, and that's one of the reasons we have our wellness room. And even if you don't go to the wellness room, which has lounge chairs and eye masks and ways to just zone out, go outside. Stanford's beautiful. I mean, the Rodin Sculpture Garden is right there, and the sunshine. That's the only bad thing about having a conference at Stanford inside, is that you want to be outside enjoying that.
And it's kind of an important topic. Well, it's not. It is an important topic. I mean, the topic of self-care, whether you're a patient or a family member or a provider or a physician, not just at this conference, but in general, and we're all overwhelmed with what we are doing on social media and our other life, and I'll be kind of curious talking with people, on how they try to balance some of this stuff with their real life and their real job and your social media life and Twitter chats and all that stuff, and that's not something that wasn't talked about, but I think it's being talked about a little bit more and more these days.
It's really being talked about in the advocacy community, and I think that that's new because there's been a hesitancy for people to think of advocacy as being like work. There was a comment made recently about like advocacy being something that we do in our spare time, which no, this is something that we're really giving ourselves toward and making it a priority. And so whether or not people are working paying jobs with benefits or whether or not they're dedicating themselves to this kind of healthcare social media online world, it's still work. And then there are those of us who have the day job and do everything. And I've talked about, you know, if all you do is give, then you're going to give out. And so there needs to be some sort of mechanism in place for you to be able to receive whatever it is you need to receive, whether that's being outside in nature, whether it's being with your family. And so striking a balance, I think, is a constant challenge. And we need to do a better job of finding ways to support one another and encourage taking that time to be mindful and center oneself so that, yeah, you don't give out.
And something I do want to let people know about, and I know it's been all over Twitter, but I think we should mention it here too, is the live stream and the Medicine X Global Access program. So Sarah, so why should everybody sign up for this great program?
For those people who can't attend, who want to actually attend in their pajamas, this is a wonderful option. And
you mean I can't show up in my pajamas at the meeting?
You probably could. I mean, last year, one of our patients, Emily Bradley, had a really bad flare due to travel, and actually I had to go out and find some slippers for her to be able to wear. And she had to go on stage, and so she went on stage wearing black fuzzy slippers. It was pretty awesome. So come as you are, man. Be comfortable, however you need to be. But the live stream, what I really like about it is MedX is actually a pretty small conference. I mean, we're talking a couple hundred people, and so this isn't some kind of like giant thousands of people industry conference kind of thing. This is much more intimate, but the live stream allows us to reach more people and get more people involved in the conversation, because linking it with Twitter, I mean, everything that's on the main stage is streamed, as it says, live. And so these people all over the world can interact with the conversation and the people who are actually there, and it makes it a much more rich experience. And people on Twitter are really great, actually, about even asking, like, okay, you tweeted this thing, but I'm not sure that I understood it correctly, and I'm not there in the room. Can you help give me some more context? And I love when people do that, and because it also helps us think a little bit more about what we're saying, because you're not tweeting in this vacuum. You're tweeting to everybody, and if you don't have this context that people can understand, then sort of what's the point?
Yeah, and just to let people know out there, I mean, I didn't realize that there were just so few actually people in the room, because on Twitter, and it's been talked about before, and it's talked about at the MedX site, you know, that this is probably the biggest conference on Twitter that is out there because of all the people that are tweeting, all the retweets. There's a nice blog post, an article about it at the Stanford Medicine X site. That is just so I could definitely understand if, you know, you're in the room and you're tweeting something and people need more context, or it's out of context, that it could be blown up into this controversy that really shouldn't have been because of clarity in the tweet.
Right. But at the same time, I like that. I mean, I would rather have that discussion and them ask that question and it result in this conversation than someone just misunderstand. And that's one of the things that's unique about the conversation, is that it is this back and forth, it's dynamic, it's rich, it's not just, there have been some conferences I've seen that they're like, okay, we want everybody to tweet, and everyone's like, I'm at the registration desk, yay! And you know, that's not really necessarily contributing to the overall experience and the people who aren't there. It's nice, and you get to say hey to your friends, but whatever you're putting out there, you know, thinking about this larger context is very useful.
And it's to let people know, and I know you probably experience this too. It is just mentally exhausting for me, at least, to tweet because at some conferences I don't tweet because I'm trying to process the information and see how it understands it to myself. But tweeting a live stream, it takes it to a different level. You have to take in the information, you have to process the information, you have to try to frame it to people who are not at the conference. And then tweet it, and then the next 5 seconds go by, and there's this other great thing that this person said on stage.
Right, exactly. So, and so you do have to decide what's worth it, and I like that there are opportunities to say, you know what, like I'm not going to do this.
I'm done.
Going to close the lid. And maybe I'll come back later.
Right.
But I was at a conference. I sort of finagled my way into a conference/meeting that was actually for stroke care providers in the region. And I had fully intended on going as I was the only patient in the room, and going with the purpose of sharing this content, because too often there are these meetings that they're held and the information just stays within the room and it doesn't have as big of an impact as it could. What I really didn't anticipate was the emotional ramifications for me of being in this room of providers and actually finding out, even though they weren't specifically talking about me, they were just talking about stroke care, and finding out exactly how badly my case had gone, not from my perspective, but from a from a provider perspective. And I was angry. I wasn't even sad. I was just angry. And it's like, don't go to bed mad. Well, don't tweet mad, because I knew that I had nothing constructive
I made that mistake
to
a lot
say.
too. Yeah. I made that mistake a lot too.
Yeah. So I mean, what do you do? What do you do when you're in that situation? Do you take a step back? I mean, how do you, or do you kind of let it fly? So,
yeah, and it really depends on the situation, and I've done it both ways, and sometimes people are saying, Mike, I'm glad you said that, and then there's other times you're like, why did you say that?
Yeah.
And then I'd have to, tweet out a correction and then write a whole 500-word blog post explaining and apologizing and all that stuff. Or other people would be like, yeah, I'm glad I said that. This is why I said that. So it really kind of depends on the time. But I guess that's kind of the fun of it. So.
Yeah, and so whenever I encourage anybody at any conference, whatever, whether you need to pay that extra level of attention, whether you just want to take a few moments and internalize it and just enjoy what's happening, do it. There's going to be somebody who will probably, kind of cover your back and share the content as well. It may, your perspective gets taken out, but you're also there for you, so make sure that you have fun as an individual.
Let's dive into your panel here, because this is something I'm passionate about, just to let people know, I'm a primary care doc. I'm a family physician in a small town here in northeastern Ohio. We have, 1 or 2 psychiatrists, so primary care sees a lot of mental health patients. The title of your panel that you're moderating is Depression and Chronic Illness and Coping Through Online Communities. It's going to be on Saturday afternoon. Mm-hmm. So tell the audience a little bit about your panel and what you hope people will get out of it.
So my panel focuses, like we said, very specifically on this depression within chronic illness and these online communities. We've got a bigger focus on mental health this year. It's something that people asked for, and we listened, and have included this content to address the issues and give people more of what they want to see. And so Dr. Ann Becker-Schutte, she has a somewhat similar panel going on during the conference. We got together, talked about the issues that specifically you bring up within primary care, and how could she and I work together to make these two panels kind of have the biggest bang for their buck. And so with her panel, we are going to be talking about the idea of mental health as a gateway to whole person health, and potentially what role could primary care providers play in doing just really, really basic screening, and not so that it's to add another burden, because you guys have so much to do already, but what tools are out there that you could be given that you would feel are helpful to do this early screening, get patients some help. Because let's say that the patient who comes to you is a diabetes patient, or like me, a pain patient, or whatever, that this is a condition that is not acute. It is not, in and out. This is something that lasts for a very extended period of time. And no matter what it is, the simple fact that this is a prolonged period of coping has a level of burden that's unique. And so how can we look at this, because it does often lead to depression, whether that depression is short-lived, whether that depression is more of a chronic case. How can we look at the effects that chronic illness have within this circle of depression, and what resources are out there for people to cope with this, that maybe they are in a community where there aren't a lot of resources, and so what can we find online? And anytime we talk about online health, it's going to be kind of tricky. Mental health, I think, gets even a little harder because everybody is such an individual. But one of the things that's been really interesting for me was mental health is something that we talk about within my FMD community. And it's something that will be talked about in other disease communities, but it honestly had never even occurred to me to go seek out specifically a mental health community. I deal with it within my disease, other people. How do we take this on in a way that's going to be productive? So one of the things that I've put out there is a call for questions. If you go to my blog, it's afternoonnapper.com. I've written a post that shares a little bit about my history dealing with depression and asks the public to submit their own questions, because we want to make this something that people get something out of this conversation. I mean, what do you want to know about? What do you want to hear people share their personal stories about? And so far the comments have been kind of slow to come in, so really, like, I really want to know what you think. Go post a comment, please. So hopefully we'll be able to incorporate some of that feedback into the panel.
Yeah, I definitely want to give that more visibility too. It's from Sunday, August 24th, and the post is at the top. It's titled "Help Shape the Mental Health Conversation at Medicine X." And it described everything that Sarah is talking about, and obviously I'll be there in person, giving some questions as well. But a couple of weeks ago, I was on a Google Hangout with some of my friends in the fastly growing suicide prevention / education community, following Robin Williams. And they touched on a lot of these topics as well: mental health, chronic disease, depression, anxiety, and signs and symptoms of those, in addition to suicide. And that's something that I have admired about the Medicine X conference and the community is that they continue to kind of push the envelope on topics that need to be talked about that are not talked about. I really am going to enjoy this mental health piece as far as the sessions this year. That's something that I'm very passionate about, that I've written about before. So I'll definitely be at your panel. I've met him before, and I've interacted with her online on Twitter chats. I've met her in person before, and I really enjoy this piece of the meeting that's going to be brought out, hopefully in future meetings. This is things, and we talked about before, as far as self-care, mental health, chronic disease. These are some of the things that have not been talked about before that I think need to be talked about, and I think Medicine X is the place to start that conversation to kind of carry that flag and really bring it through, not only to the patient community but also to the physicians, providers community, families, to talk about some of the stuff that has really never been talked about before.
Yeah, and again, like the comment about not operating in the vacuum, there are lots of different conversations out there being had in lots of different spaces. And it's not to say that, like, we are the only or the best or the first or whatever, because, I mean, somewhere somebody has done something, and that's great. Anything that we are able to add to the conversation is just, like you say, amplifying the signal. And this particular signal is one that is only going to be overcome by talking about it more. And it's going to take really some prominent people sharing their experiences to reduce some of the stigma. And there are, we have celebrities who talk about different illnesses, and that gives a great spotlight to things. But there's there are more diseases than there are celebrities, I think. I don't know. There are a lot of celebrities. But I could use one, so if there are any celebrities out there who want to take on FMD, let me know. But one doesn't have to be famous to make a difference. One doesn't have to be famous to put out that voice and connect with people. And so it just takes a little bit of courage to share oneself and to expose oneself and make it a little bit raw. And I know that I am afforded a few certain luxuries that enable me to take these risks. And so I'll do it so that somebody else doesn't have to. And that makes me happy. I mean, that's just all it boils down to, is that if I can make a difference somehow, then it's worth it.
And I've heard talked about during those fabulous Google Hangouts sponsored by Medicine X through the past year or so, this issue of disclosure and self-disclosure. Whether you have a chronic illness, chronic medical illness, or chronic mental illness, what the potential risk of that is to your friends, your neighbors, your employer. And I'm glad those conversations are being out there. There really isn't a great solution to it, but I'm glad that people are talking about that, because somebody like you be like, yeah, I'm out there, but if there's somebody at their computer right now watching this saying, I'm not sure if I want to self-disclose, and because it is a big step, wouldn't you say, to do that?
Yeah, oh, absolutely, and it's not for everyone. And I think there's many different levels of self-disclosure. We as a society have gotten to be in this weird place that either we're taking selfies of absolutely everything we eat and posting them on social media, or there are really important issues that we aren't telling anybody. And there's got to be some kind of middle ground. You don't have to go public with whatever it is you're facing. But if you can find someone to talk to, again, friend, family, whatever, and particularly if you're dealing with these mental health issues, you don't need to sit on this and bottle this up and kind of force additional isolation on yourself. There are people out there who get it. No matter what it is, you're not alone. And so even if it's that you find something online and you reach out one-on-one to a person and say, hey, I'm going through the same thing, and what you said really made a difference and impacted me and helped me, that's enough. I mean, you don't have to tell the world. You don't have to tell anybody, but you should know that you can, and that'll be okay.
Yeah, I talked a little bit about the MedX Google Hangouts, and I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to be part of one of those. That was very fun. What was it like moderating? What was it like being a panelist? What was it like, having that whole experience, knowing that Medicine X made this a priority, made this something important to share the story of the meeting through the entire year, and not just during those 4 days of a conference?
Yeah, we like to think of this as more than just a conference, that think of it as an experience. And I mean, yeah, we make the reference about those of us who have drunk the Kool-Aid, and yeah, we're like, we have. I don't argue it, and we live it and breathe it and love it, and that's great for us, and there are others who don't, but those of us who do, being able to continue the conversation throughout the year is part of engagement, but it's also just, we joke about this whole thing called the MedX hangover, that you go and it's awesome and then it's over and then you have to wait all year. Well, this was a way to kind of keep that going, keep the feeling alive. And so we made it a priority, which I think anybody who's ever tried to coordinate people for anything, will know that it's herding cats. But
yeah, exactly. Are you going to be there? Are you going to be there? What time is it? Can you work your computer? This is Google Hangouts. Have you done anything like this before? Yeah, I get it. I understand.
Exactly. And but from either being a guest or a moderator, it was a really awesome experience just to be able to have these conversations, because we were able to bring some really awesome people on board and have, I think, some pretty quality conversations. And I am a journalist kind of by trade. That's my background, and so asking questions comes very naturally to me. And so I probably enjoyed being a moderator maybe more than I enjoyed being a panelist, because answering questions, yeah, like the answering questions.
I
oh my God!
I feel like I'm the moderator, but I'm going to say something here. So,
well, I think that there's a fine line, because again, I feel a certain responsibility to share. That if I'm going to ask these questions of people, and I expect them to be honest with me, why shouldn't they have the same expectation from me? And so, like with the blog post referencing the mental health conversation and calling for questions, I mean, that's why I say, if I'm going to ask you things, I'm going to tell you my story. And so, yeah, sometimes to be able to frame a question, I'll share an experience of mine, or just to kind of get us on a kind of level playing field, I'll share something, because otherwise, I don't know why. I guess why am I there? It's about having personality. It's about engaging. So.
I did want to talk about FMD Chat. When you talk to people about FMD Chat, when people ask you about FMD Chat, what do you tell them?
um, it's not just a chat, for starters. we developed the name FMD Chat to give off a sense of friendliness, approachability, community. We have since kind of spelled out the acronym some to be creating health awareness together. But for those who don't know, FMD is short for fibromuscular dysplasia, which is not fibromyalgia, which is not foot and mouth disease. Thank you. And so fibromuscular dysplasia is this rare disease that unfortunately not a lot of people know about, and by people I also include providers. The awareness of it is fairly low, and so that's been something that's been a mission of mine, is increasing awareness of it, just not even the general public, but within providers, so that maybe when I go to the doctor, I don't have to spell what I have for the people who are treating me. And so this has been going now since 2011, actually immediately after what was then Med 2.0. It was very apparent to me that in order to get what I needed, I was going to have to create it. And so we started as this, solely online community of patients to patients, and it's grown so that we are now officially a 501c3, and we are going to have our annual retreat coming up actually in November. And that's the one time a year that our patient community really gets a chance to come together and have some person-to-person time, because otherwise we're too few and far between to have a sort of real, like, in-person support group. And I want research, but moreover, what I want right now for patients is an improved quality of life. Because research is awesome, research isn't going to do anything for me. And so it's what can we do for the current patient body to help support them, get them the resources they need, and address some of the issues that patients report, such as fatigue, pain, these things that aren't really necessarily demonstrated in the literature, because A, there's not a lot of literature, and B, too much of the existing literature is based on case reports. So it doesn't really take the patient experience into focus. So that's something that we're really trying to get out there more.
And reading more about your story, I mean, you weren't even diagnosed until you were in your 30s, is that right? I mean, that had to be very frustrating going through life saying, what is going on? I don't know.
Yeah. I had a childhood of GI distress that we'd followed that path, and that didn't really lead anywhere conclusive. I had my gallbladder out, I had double jaw relocation surgery. Then my senior year of college, my blood pressure shot through the roof, yada, yada, yada. Didn't respond to medications, ended up that I had renal artery stenosis, and also my celiac and mesenteric arteries were completely occluded.
Wow.
Yeah, so GI trouble explained, and high BP explained, and why it wouldn't respond to medication. And so that renal artery was, almost completely shut off, and the kidney was dying. And so we went in and we did a triple bypass, which most of the times you say triple bypass and everybody's like, oh, cardiac. And it's like, no,
right.
guts, And so that was great. Everything was fabulous. Everything resolved beautifully. And that was in 2005. And so then in May of 2008, I had a stroke that we think was a dissection of the cavernous segment of the internal carotid artery. And, well, at least I think that based on my research. They don't think anything because they didn't find it. But that signified that the bypass had failed, blood pressure started going back up, ended up losing the kidney, also, by the way, found 4 brain aneurysms, and then had a gastric rupture as well, which my stomach ripped a hole in itself from the inside out, which is exactly as much fun as it sounds. So all of that had happened without any diagnosis.
Right.
And it's like, okay, now seriously, nobody has just this bad luck. I mean, something is up here. And we knew sort of some things about what it wasn't, because there are some things you can test for and some things that you can't. And so we had at least a list of things that it wasn't, but not what it was. And so I'd been doing my own research the entire time because, like I said, journalist nerd, that's what I do. And based on my history, I had access to my records and everything, and it really came down to being either that I had intimal fibromuscular dysplasia, which is a rare version of the rare disease, or that I had vascular Ehlers-Danlos. And so I contacted a doctor at the Cleveland Clinic and said, you know, these are my 2 bets. I'm going with the intimal fibromuscular dysplasia, and she actually emailed back and said, I think you're right, but I need to see you. And for me, what was different is since I had had bypass, there was a biopsy available for her to evaluate. But most patients, you know, don't have that, and you don't really want to go hacking on patients' arteries unless you really have to. And so, you know, that was what made it possible for me to get that diagnosis confirmed. But yeah, I was 31. It was August 3rd of 2011.
Wow. So this month, I mean, a month anniversary.
Yeah, which you can't help but mark those, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And you mentioned, kind of reflecting back on your panel, and you mentioned in your blog post, you know, depression and anxiety issues and mental health issues. And I know you'll be reflecting that in your panel as well. But I mean, I can only presume years and years and years of going through that. I mean, there's no other, you know, thing to feel like, what the hell's going on here? Just like, it's not me. Nobody can figure out what's going on. I'm like, what is the next step? And nobody knows. And I can't even imagine kind of going through that myself.
Yes and no. My depression diagnosis and anxiety diagnosis actually came years before the other diagnoses. And that, for me, I mentioned in the blog post, I'm an only child, and so going to college for me and suddenly being stripped of my adult support network was really difficult for me. And so over the years, like going through a lot of training and therapy to learn how to manage that more actively, and like what you can control and what you can't, like that was really helpful for me to build up to these things later on, because you have to realize that worrying about things isn't going to fix anything. It's not going to change anything. Being angry about it isn't going to change anything. All it's going to do is, you know, potentially make you really crummy to be around and potentially negatively impact your health. And so I had a choice. You know, I could either be, like a total jerk about it, or embrace it and try to make a difference with it. And I knew that when I had my bypass, it was challenging because for all intents and purposes, I should probably be dead like a couple of times over now. And I'm not. And so I'm thinking, well, that's probably for some sort of reason. And so I want to fulfill that reason. I want to do my best to do whatever it is I am here to do. And that can be a little bit overwhelming sometimes, But otherwise, I was actually talking with another advocate about this kind of stuff last night that I wouldn't change a thing. Which, yeah, it may sound kind of nutty to people who haven't gone through anything, but I wouldn't trade it because it has given me so much knowledge and so many opportunities to meet awesome people and do awesome things, and yeah, maybe leave a little tiny bit of a mark in a positive way. And so it is what it is, you know, and could I maybe do without the scar tissue? Yes. You know, but otherwise, I actually kind of feel fortunate.
Well, one more question, then I want to ask you about your day job because I'm very curious about that.
Okay.
You know, you've been telling your story for a while now, and you know, and you're a pro at this, and you've done this, and you know, I mean, I gave you very little prep, and you know what to do. But going through this, I mean, you tell the same story to different people. Do you feel like you're making a difference? I mean, how do you feel like you're making a difference? I mean, is it still feeling like you're banging your head against the wall, or do you feel like you're moving the needle a little bit?
Both. Uh, so yes, there are times that, and I think any advocate will have gone through this, that there are times they're just like, why in the hell am I doing this? Is hard, and I don't need to do this. Somebody else will do this, and you know, I mean, frankly, not all the time will somebody else do it. Sometimes you have to do it, but then there are little tiny things that it's inevitable that when I will get to the point that I'm just like, and that something will happen to be really meaningful, that a brand newly diagnosed patient will find us. And we'll be like, oh my God, I've been so alone and so scared, and now I have people. And to be able to at all contribute to providing that community is really awesome. There also have been some pretty darn cool stories. Last year at our annual retreat, we did a live stream, which, I mean, we talk about hacking, you know.
I saw that. I mean, I
Yes,
saw the link for
okay,
that.
like, yes, okay.
It was like 4 hours on YouTube or something like
Yes.
that, and I was like, "This has got to be cool." So I kept, you know, going back and forth and kind of seeing what was happening, and that's what's cool about social media and technology is that you guys want to do this. You guys want to tell your story out there, and I think it was very cool.
Well, and I mean, technology-wise, like, it was my laptop. It was my laptop, and I told the speakers, like, hey, sometimes you're going to be on camera, sometimes you're not, but they can still hear you, so go for it. And this year I am happy to say that thanks to some very discounted purchases, we now have a tripod, and a streaming video camera is on its way, so yay! So yay, upgrades. But so we were doing our live stream, and actually my neurologist came and spoke, and he was talking about the differences between stroke and TIA, and you know, sometimes you also just get like kind of a little weird dizzy spell. It's like, for us, we're like, well, was that a thing or was that not a thing? And like, do I go to the hospital or do I not go to the hospital? And so he's going over this stuff, and one of our patients has tuned in, and she shares the live stream link on her Facebook page. And her mom tunes in. And watches my neurologist give this presentation, and at like 2 p.m. that afternoon has a stroke.
Wow.
And because she was watching the live stream, was able to identify the symptoms and that she was having a problem and get in touch with her daughter, and they got her to the hospital. And because of that quick response, the damage was not as severe. And like, that could be the only thing ever to have happened, and I'd be good.
Oh,
That's
wow. That I mean, you should tell that story more. I mean, just that story right there. I mean, people talk about really dumb stuff on YouTube and this and that and whatever. I mean, people need to talk more about, real life, what happens when people are sitting at home. They see a link on Twitter and they say, go watch this medical education thing, and it's going to impact people's lives.
Yeah, I mean, and that was a lot. That was me turning on the webcam of my laptop. Imagine what else can be done. Being able to, just recently we had a new patient come into the community, and we really encouraged her to get a blood pressure cuff at home, which, some doctors will be like, oh my God, the last thing I want my patients to have is a blood pressure cuff at home, because they'll give me too many readings and it'll be, so, which I get. For us, it's one of the early indicators. And so she got a blood pressure cuff, and her numbers started posting high and consistently high. And so she knew that something was wrong, and went to the hospital, and sure enough, it was danger territory, and they were able to get her medicated, able to get her stabilized, and potentially prevent something more serious from happening. So, there are just all kinds of these little things that amount to a whole heck of a lot. And so that's why, that's the kind of stuff that makes me say I feel fortunate, and that I wouldn't trade it for anything. Because, I mean, no, we're not practicing medicine as patients, but if we're able to help someone take better care of themselves, then I think that's kind of helping everybody. So.
That's such a powerful story. As we close up, I do want to give a shout out to your day job. And what people don't know out there is that all these advocates that are out there, very few of them do advocacy as a full-time job. There's a lot of these people who are advocates who have a day job. Me, I'm not a normal, physician social media superstar. I have a day job too. But because you sent me some of the magazines, it is Smoky Mountain Living. Go to the website right now, smliv.com. It is, and you just had a deadline like 2 days ago.
Yeah.
It's probably not something that you talk about a lot. Tell people about this magazine. Tell people about your role with the magazine. What do you do with it?
So I'm the managing editor. I am, if you get a copy and you open it up, I am the one with my picture in the front of it, which is kind of weird. I conceive all of our themes and edit all our copy and work with all our freelancers and do marketing and all this kind of stuff. And so, yeah, it takes more time than, I don't know, underwater basket weaving. But I like doing it. It very much gives me this creative outlet and the ability to do something different. And, people may or may not know that my husband, the one I talked about in the Caregiver video, he's actually my art director. And so we work together as in addition to all the other things that we do, and have not killed each other yet, so that's a plus. Although this most recent deadline, yeah, he probably wanted to shake me. But we have fun. We really have fun. He is a reader, and so he appreciates things on my end, and my background actually is, I was a journalism major at Chapel Hill, but I focused in graphic design. And so I'm able to appreciate things from his perspective. And so we work really, really well together. And that's been something over the years that we've said, you know, could I do something else? Would I do something else? Yes, you know, I mean, that may still be in the cards, but we really enjoy spending that time together and producing something together. So,
What drew you towards journalism? What do you love about journalism?
I have no idea. So one of my coworkers, oh my God! So one of my coworkers, she's a pistol. She and I were talking about a story assignment of what do people do in order to be able to do what they love to do. You know, like the waiter who's waiting tables but really wants to be a painter, or yeah, the lawyer who just wants to bake bread in a brick oven, like whatever, like what is it that we have to do in order to do what we want to do? And she says, yeah, you know, I mean, I like to talk to people, so I became a journalist so that I could talk to people. Like, that explains everything. And so I have always been a writer. I don't, like, literally, like, I don't remember not writing, not liking to write and tell stories and to read. And the only other thing that I maybe would have been an English major, which my father would never have allowed. And so this allows me to never stop learning. And, I mean, you get to go out and talk to these people and ask them about, you know, 1,000 questions about what they do. And hopefully they're passionate about it and they're excited about it. And so they tell you, and so you get to be passionate and excited about it. And just you end up knowing a little bit of something about a whole lot of things. And that's a lot of fun.
We're getting more tweets on the Twitter machine, and we're getting more views, which I'm very excited about. But if you have a few more minutes, I did want to ask you about Columbia. I did want to ask you about the narrative medicine program. I learned about it a couple years ago, and I think when you were talking about it, I learned about it a little bit more. Tell the audience a little bit about that program and then what your experiences was through that.
Yeah. So, narrative medicine, and there's actually a little bit of debate about even the terminology narrative medicine, but let's basically just think of it as writing. Whether it's fiction, whether it's nonfiction, about the provider experience, about the patient experience. There are some really, really powerful stories out there. If you get a chance to read or hear read any Chris Adrian, run, get it. Abraham Verghese is one who is in this sort of category. Rita Sharon is the big name who really coined this kind of narrative medicine thing and heads the program at Columbia, which the program at Columbia is really geared for doctors. And I wanted to go. So through some really awesome crowdfunding support, you know, everybody put their support behind me and enabled me to go to this weekend-long program that it does result in certification, that it's this intensive study. And working through workshops with, there were, I think, one Caregiver and one or two other people who would identify predominantly as patients. But everybody else was within this provider realm. And what can we explore by taking this narrative approach, by storytelling? How can we get closer to actually evaluating our feelings about it? And it's interesting just to see kind of what can be done with these things. Like I was a teacher for a while and actually taught at a local community college, and my students could not have cared less about being in an English class. They were mostly wildlife and forestry students, you know, all guys who would rather be out in the woods. And so one of the points that I try to get across with them was, you know, this English does not have to be Shakespeare. I do not need you to get up here and recite like a prologue for me in order to make some sort of connection, that I could read John Muir and Bill Bryson and these things that actually had some sort of relevance to their life. And so it's the same kind of idea of, you know, maybe there's some doctor out there who's like, wow, I could not care less about fiction, but let's put it in a medical context and explore some of the themes like life and death that you guys deal with. And so it was just such an incredible opportunity for me, but it's been this very long, slow simmer of figuring out kind of what am I going to do with it. And it actually has kind of come to a sort of fruition with the speech that I have to give on Friday, which, oh, wish me luck on this one.
You don't need
no. This one is one that, man, that I have to go for, and if I don't go for it, it's not going to work. So, yeah, but it'll.
Well, I'm gonna be there Thursday night if you want to chat or do all of this stuff. But I guess the other question is, so through this program, maybe a book.
So I've said that for actually a pretty long time now. And the first thing that I thought that I would do book-wise is do sort of a guide. And then I went through a lot of like figuring out, okay, well, how am I going to structure this and all that kind of, and maybe that still needs to be done. I don't know. It's figuring out what's my point. What do I want people to do as a result? And
yeah,
you know,
I get it. I got you. Yeah.
So yeah, so we'll see.
And just let my vast millions of viewing public out there. I have not met Sarah in person yet, and she's definitely on my short list of people I'm going to be looking forward to meeting.
Well, I'm also very short, so that works.
As we start to close up our conversation here, I did want to plug again Stanford Medicine X, medicinex.stanford.com, and tell people out there why they should register for the live stream, why they should register for the Global Access Program, why it's going to be awesome.
Because they'll get to see me. Duh. No.
Duh. Exactly. On Friday morning.
Yay! So yeah, no, because we want you to be there. I mean, if nothing, we want you to be there. It's free. Learn something. Enjoy something. Get a viewing party together at your office or curl up on your couch with a bag of popcorn, and we welcome you with open arms.
And where can people find information about you? Where can people find information about FMD Chat out there on the interwebs?
So for me, I am at Afternoon Napper on Twitter. AfternoonNapper.com is the blog. There's some Google Plus and various YouTubes and all kinds of work. Just look for Afternoon Napper, you'll find me. As for FMD Chat, go to fmdchat.org. We also have a public Facebook page, so it's facebook.com/FMDchat. We are on the Rare Connect platform, which is a partnership of the European and North American rare disease organizations. So if you look for Rare Connect, you'll find us there. And we also have a community with smart patients. So it is a private community, but if you look for smartpatients.com and sign up, then perhaps you can find us there. So, and we're on Twitter and YouTube and Facebook, and yeah, we do the social media kind of a lot. So, yeah.
Before I let you go, I'll let you gather your thoughts for any closing thoughts for my patients, but I do want to let people know that this has been a great series for me, talking with people going to Medicine X, not only Sarah, but our friends Christopher Snyder and Meredith Gould and Dr. Brida Verdabedian, and if anybody else wants to try to contact me in like the next 4 days before the meeting to do that, you can get all those interviews at MikeSevilla.tv. And hopefully I want to write a blog post on these at DrMikeSevilla.com. It's been fun just to kind of getting people prepped and excited for the meeting. And again, it's medicinex.stanford.com. And Sarah, thank you so much for the great chat, for a great interview. And it's been so fun just to chat with you. It'd be great to meet with you in person. But as we kind of close things up, any closing thoughts from my audience about Medicine X, about being a patient advocate, about life, about anything else that you have for us today?
Oh gosh, I would say, I mean, it's in terms of advocacy, it's not even defined as patient advocate, just as an advocate, because you're an advocate for yourself no matter who you are, whether you're a provider needing that emotional space or whether you're the patient needing a treatment. Just advocate for yourself.
Very good, very good. So yeah, thanks a lot for the time. It's going to be great meeting you in person and just kind of chatting kind of off the record about some of the stuff which we can't share with you all. It's going to be fun talking about that. So thanks so much for the time. And for everybody else out there, follow me on Twitter, DrMikeSevilla.com. I'll be tweeting a lot this week. I'm going to be telling you that right now. I'm warning you. If you want to unfollow me now or mute me or whatever, just do that right now. DrMikeSevilla.com. It gets you all my social media sites, Twitter and Facebook and LinkedIn and YouTube and podcast. And I love doing these Google Hangout things now. So I will see you out there on the interwebs there, kids. So bye, everybody.
Bye.